We need to beat teams like the Dallas Wings. We need to beat teams like the Washington Mystics to keep our positioning and to maintain a playoff spot at the very least. Yet Stephanie White doesn't seem to understand that concept. As soon as this team won 5 straight games, they have been absolutely awful since, winning once in the meantime.
The Indiana Fever walked into their matchup against the Washington Mystics with hope, momentum, and a chance to solidify their playoff push. Instead, what unfolded was nothing short of a collapse that left fans speechless and ownership furious. Herb Simon, the longtime owner of the Fever, reportedly could not believe what he witnessed from the sidelines.
This was a bad game. This was a bad watch. Real quick, from a viewing standpoint,
a double-digit lead vanished in the blink of an eye. Players looked lost, and head coach Stephanie White once again found herself at the center of blame. For a franchise already walking a fine line between promise and disaster, this loss felt like a breaking point. Simon's frustration wasn't just about the scoreboard. It was about the way the team folded under pressure and the growing doubts surrounding White's leadership. Tonight's game wasn't simply another loss. It was a statement of dysfunction, and it may trigger major changes inside the Fever organization.
From the coaches, from the players, this was indefensible, folks. I gotta be honest with you. This was indefensible. We lost 88-84. And let's be very clear here. We were up by 13 in the first half. 13 in the first half.
The Fever entered this matchup against the Washington Mystics with everything to play for. The standings showed them just 1.5 games out of the 9th seed, and the schedule had handed them an opportunity: face a Mystics team that had been struggling all season. These are the kinds of games a playoff hopeful team cannot afford to throw away. And yet, somehow, the Fever did exactly that.
The Washington Mystics proceed to go on a 18-7 run, giving them a 9-point lead. As soon as they took that lead, folks, we've seen this movie far too many times. We've seen the script far too many times. No way this team's going to come back after losing a lead in the fourth quarter. That's just not in our DNA. That's just not something that we seem capable of.
Momentum was already shaky coming into this game. After a 5-game win streak that gave fans hope, the Fever fell apart, dropping 4 of their next 5. Losses against teams like the Los Angeles Sparks and Phoenix Mercury exposed their inconsistency, while a narrow victory over the Chicago Sky did little to restore confidence. When the Fever walked into Washington, there was a sense that this was a get-right game, a chance to re-establish dominance and stop the bleeding. Instead, it turned into another embarrassing chapter. From the opening tip, the Fever looked like a team ready to silence critics. They raced out to a 13-point lead in the first half, moving the ball well, locking down defensively, and showing flashes of the potential fans had been waiting for all season. But as the minutes ticked by, cracks began to appear. The very problems that have haunted this team all year, lack of discipline, poor rotations, questionable shot selection, started creeping in again by halftime, despite holding the lead.
Stephanie White actually draws up a decent play. Wow, Stephanie, you drew up a decent play for the first time all season. I'm so impressed. Please go take a bow at the post-game press conference.
There were already murmurs among fans and commentators about how sustainable it was. The Fever have a reputation for letting go of momentum, and that reputation proved prophetic. Heading into the fourth quarter with a slim 2-point advantage, it looked like the game was still theirs to win. But then came the collapse. The Mystics launched an 18-7 run to open the fourth, flipping the game on its head and snatching control. The Fever, instead of responding with poise, panicked. Shots stopped falling, the defense broke down, and the energy that fueled their first half lead disappeared. Fans who had seen this storyline before could already feel it once the Fever lose the lead. They rarely find a way to take it back. This loss didn't just sting because of the result. It stung because of what it symbolized: a team without direction, unable to close out games, and lacking the leadership to steady the ship when the pressure rises. It stung because playoff hopes don't survive when you can't beat the very teams you're supposed to beat. And above all, it stung because Herb Simon, watching as the team he owns unraveled yet again, was left to wonder if his coach and players were capable of handling the moment. This was more than a loss on the scoreboard. It was a collapse that exposed deeper problems, and those problems became impossible to ignore. For years, Herb Simon has been known as one of the most patient and loyal owners in professional basketball. He rarely makes headlines, choosing to let his front office and coaches run the day-to-day while he quietly supports from behind the scenes. But after this disastrous loss to the Washington Mystics, insiders say Simon's patience may finally be wearing thin. What he witnessed was not just a bad night of basketball, it was a reflection of deeper dysfunction that he can no longer ignore. Imagine being the owner of a team that had the game in hand, only to see a 13-point lead evaporate in front of your eyes. The Fever weren't playing a powerhouse like the Liberty or the Aces. They were playing a Mystics team missing key pieces, a game that should have been a statement win. Instead, the Fever folded in spectacular fashion. For Simon, this wasn't just disappointing, it was embarrassing. Ownership has invested resources, talent, and trust into this roster. And to see them collapse against a struggling opponent struck a nerve. The target of Simon's frustration has become increasingly obvious. Head coach Stephanie White, he has stood by her through tough stretches, but this was different. This wasn't about injuries, scheduling, or mismatches. This was about a team that looked unprepared, unfocused, and unmotivated. To Simon, that falls squarely on the coach's shoulders. Fans echo the sentiment, chanting on social media that White is drowning and has no voice. Every poor rotation, every wasted timeout, every failure to adjust reflects back on her leadership, and Simon knows it. The Chloe Bai situation is a perfect example. The rookie had scored 11 points in 12 minutes in the previous game against Dallas, showing energy and efficiency that could have swung this matchup. Yet she didn't play a single minute against the Mystics. For an owner watching from above, that's the kind of baffling decision that screams mismanagement. How do you sit a young sparkplug who just proved her value? How do you let Odyssey Sims, who disappeared in the second half, get extended minutes instead? These are the questions Simon is reportedly furious about. It goes deeper than just rotations. Simon watched as his supposed stars, Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, looked overwhelmed and uninspired. He saw veterans like Natasha Howard contribute 1 rebound in 26 minutes. He saw a locker room without accountability and a sideline without urgency. To an owner, that's not just one bad game. That's a pattern. That's a culture problem. And culture problems are where ownership steps in, sources close to the team say Simon is beginning to question whether Stephanie White is capable of leading this roster into the future. He's not just upset about the loss, he's upset about the way the team looked in the loss. Disorganized, uninspired, lost. The kind of performance that forces an owner to ask hard questions. Questions that may soon have drastic consequences for this franchise. When a team unravels as badly as the Fever did against the Mystics, the spotlight inevitably shifts to the head coach. Stephanie White has faced criticism before, but this game magnified every flaw in her decision-making. Fans, analysts, and even insiders have all zeroed in on the same question. Was this loss a result of the players failing to execute, or was it the coach failing to lead? One of the biggest talking points was the complete absence of Chloe Bai just a game earlier against Dallas. She made an impact in limited minutes, scoring 11 points in 12 minutes and injecting energy into the lineup. Sitting her against Washington felt not only questionable, but borderline reckless. In a game where the Fever's offense stagnated in the second half, her spark might have made the difference. For fans, it was inexcusable. For Herb Simon watching, it was evidence that White's rotations lack logic and adaptability. Then there's Odyssey Sims. She played 26 minutes, more than Sophie Cunningham, despite fading out of the game entirely in the second half. Sims had 9 points before halftime, but gave nothing afterward, finishing with just 2 points across 12 second-half minutes. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham, who provided defense, hustle, and the only positive plus-minus among the starters, barely touched the ball. Time and time again, Sophie stood on the perimeter, waving her arms, calling for touches, only to watch Sims force up another low-quality shot. White's refusal to adjust that imbalance raised serious questions about her ability to manage in-game situations. Equally baffling was how White handled Kelsey Mitchell's off night. Mitchell went 6-for-19, forcing shots into double teams, missing an open layup with 15 seconds left, and bricking key three-pointers. Yet rather than redirecting the offense through Aaliyah Boston or setting up more structured plays, White allowed Mitchell to continue forcing the action. A good coach knows when to empower their stars and when to protect them from themselves. Instead, White looked passive, letting the game slip away without intervention. Her use of timeouts also left much to be desired. During the Mystics' fourth quarter run, White sat on her hands, waiting until the lead had completely flipped before stopping the game. Momentum is everything in basketball, and her late response allowed Washington to build confidence while the Fever looked more and more rattled. Fans watching couldn't understand why she didn't try to calm her players, reset the defense, or create a quick scoring opportunity before the game spiraled at the end of the night. Coaching isn't just about drawing plays, it's about adjustments, accountability, and leadership. Against Washington, White showed none of those. She looked like a passenger, not a driver, and the team reflected that lack of direction. It's why criticism of her has gone from whispers to open frustration. Herb Simon didn't just see a bad loss. He saw his coach make decisions that actively contributed to it. And that's where the anger intensifies. If the first half gave Fever fans hope, the fourth quarter crushed it in the most brutal way possible. This was not just a bad stretch of basketball, it was a textbook collapse, the kind that defines a season and leaves scars long after the final buzzer. The Fever had a 2-point lead heading into the last period after Damiris Dantas knocked down a clutch three to close the third. Momentum seemed to be on their side, but within minutes, everything unraveled. The Mystics came out, firing, ripping off an 18-7 run that flipped the game from competitive to hopeless. Suddenly, Washington had a 9-point lead, and the Fever looked like they'd never seen this situation before, even though fans have watched it play out time and time again. Instead of responding with poise, the team panicked. The offense devolved into isolation plays and forced shots. Defensive rotations broke down, leaving Mystics shooters wide open on the perimeter. The body language told the story. Heads down, hands on hips, and players looking to each other for answers that weren't there. This wasn't just about missed shots, it was about mentality. The Fever have developed a reputation for folding when adversity strikes, and the fourth quarter against the Mystics was the perfect example. Every time Washington landed a punch, the Fever absorbed it without countering. They didn't execute plays, they didn't control the tempo, and worst of all, they didn't look like a team that believed it could claw back. That absence of fight is what has left fans livid and Herb Simon fuming. Even when Stephanie White finally drew up a decent play with 15 seconds left, a rare highlight in her coaching performance, execution fell apart. Aaliyah Boston posted up with excellent position, waving her hands for the ball, but Kelsey Mitchell ignored her. Instead, Mitchell tried to go one-on-one, missed an uncontested layup, and effectively sealed the loss. That single moment captured everything wrong with this Fever team: poor decision-making, lack of trust, and no sense of discipline in crunch time. What makes the collapse sting even more is how familiar it felt. Fans could predict the ending the moment the Mystics took the lead. It's become a running theme. The Fever can build leads, but they can't protect them. As soon as the pressure ramps up in the fourth quarter, confidence evaporates. The Mystics sensed it, attacked it, and took control like seasoned closers. Meanwhile, the Fever looked like a team hoping someone else would save them. Losing close games is one thing, folding repeatedly in the same fashion is another. This wasn't about being outclassed by a superior opponent. This was about giving away a winnable game because of mental weakness and lack of leadership. And it's why Herb Simon's frustration is boiling over. He's not just watching losses pile up, he's watching a team that doesn't know how to finish, and that's a damning indictment of both the players and the coach. When a franchise invests in cornerstone stars, the expectation is simple. Those players must rise when the moment is biggest. For the Fever, that responsibility fell squarely on the shoulders of Aaliyah Boston and Natasha Howard. Yet against the Mystics, both failed to deliver. Their box scores may look respectable at a glance, but anyone who watched the game knows those numbers were empty. They weren't impactful, they weren't memorable, and they didn't come when the team needed them most. Take Aaliyah Boston, for example. She finished with 20 points and 9 rebounds, which on paper looks solid, but context is everything. Boston was guarded by rookie Kiki Irvin, and despite the mismatch, it was Irvin who controlled the matchup. The rookie posted an 18-point, 12-rebound double-double, completely outshining Boston. It wasn't just that Boston's stats lacked meaning, it was that she was outworked, out-hustled, and outshined by a first-year player. When the Fever desperately needed their all-star to impose her will, she instead faded into the background. Fans didn't remember her 20 points. They remembered her inability to dominate when the opportunity was gift-wrapped. Then there was Natasha Howard, a veteran presence, a future Hall of Famer, and supposedly the steadying force in the front court against Washington. She was anything but. Howard finished with 11 points, but her glaring failure was on the glass. 1 rebound, 1 in 26 minutes of play. Howard managed to secure just a single board while committing 4 turnovers. That stat line wasn't just disappointing, it was disgraceful for a player of her stature. To put it bluntly, Howard looked disengaged, and her lack of production left the Fever exposed inside. The frustration wasn't just about numbers, though. It was about body language, effort, and presence. Boston and Howard both seemed to disappear in crucial stretches. When the Mystics launched their decisive run in the fourth quarter, neither player demanded the ball, barked at teammates, or showed leadership. Instead, they allowed the game to slip away, and the Mystics rookies stepped into the void that the Fever stars left vacant. It's the kind of reversal that makes fans furious and makes owners like Herb Simon question the entire direction of the franchise. Star players are supposed to set the tone. They're supposed to be the ones that teammates look to when adversity strikes. But in this game, Boston's quiet 20 points and Howard's ineffective night embodied everything wrong with the Fever. Talent without impact, experience without leadership. Fans don't care about a padded box score, they care about whether the Stars made winning plays. Against the Mystics, they didn't. For Simon, the most alarming part is that this wasn't an isolated incident, it's become a pattern. Boston's production too often feels hollow, while Howard has been wildly inconsistent. When your biggest names vanish in the spotlight, no system, no coach, and no role player can make up for it. And that's why this game felt like more than a single loss. It felt like an indictment of the very foundation this team has been built on. If the frontcourt struggles against the Mystics were glaring, the backcourt's performance was downright crushing. Guards are supposed to be the engine of a team, controlling tempo, creating scoring chances, and closing out games when the pressure mounts. Instead, the Fever's guards turned a winnable matchup into a wasted opportunity. Kelsey Mitchell, Odyssey Sims, and the rotation around them delivered one of the most frustrating displays fans have seen all season. Let's start with Kelsey Mitchell. Her stat line read 14 points and 9 assists, but that hardly tells the story. Mitchell shot just 6-for-19 from the field, forcing bad looks and dribbling herself into trouble all night. It wasn't just an off-shooting night, it was her decision-making that buried the team. Late in the fourth quarter, with a chance to cut into the Mystics' lead, Mitchell had an open lane and an uncontested layup. Somehow, she hit the bottom of the rim, a play that instantly deflated whatever hope remained. Just moments later, she bricked an open 3 from the corner that could have swung momentum back. These weren't just misses, they were defining moments that showcased her inability to deliver when it mattered most. Mitchell's struggles were compounded by the lack of structure around her. Time and again, she found herself trying to take defenders one-on-one rather than running set plays through Olia Boston or creating opportunities for Sophie Cunningham. When guards ignore their stars in the paint and default to isolation, the offense becomes predictable, stagnant, and easy to defend. Mitchell didn't just miss shots, she abandoned the team's identity, and it showed in the collapse. Then came Odyssey Sims, whose role became one of the most baffling aspects of Stephanie White's coaching. Sims logged 26 minutes more than she deserved based on her performance. She scored 9 points in the first half, providing a brief spark, but in the second half, she completely disappeared. 2 points in 12 minutes, along with poor shot selection, left the Fever handicapped when they needed stability. Instead of tightening the rotation or leaning on more reliable options, White let Sims shoot the team out of rhythm, while Cunningham, the only starter with a positive plus-minus, was ignored on offense. Watching Sims dominate the ball while Sophie waved her arms on the perimeter was enough to infuriate fans. What makes the guard play even harder to stomach is the lack of accountability. When a team's leaders on the floor look out of sync and unwilling to adapt, it drags everyone else down. Guards set the tone. They control pace, dictate shot quality, and apply defensive pressure. Against Washington, the Fever's guards did none of that. They settled for contested jumpers, dribbled into double teams, and failed to recognize mismatches in the paint. Missed shots can be forgiven, missed opportunities cannot. The Fever's guards had countless chances to put the Mystics away, to slow the game down, or to run smart possessions through their strengths. Instead, they panicked, played hero ball, and collapsed under pressure. And when your backcourt unravels this badly, no amount of frontcourt talent can save you. This wasn't just a loss. It was a masterclass in how poor guard play can sabotage an entire team's effort. A team's bench is supposed to provide stability, spark, and relief when starters falter. For the Fever against the Mystics, the bench offered none of those things. Instead, questionable rotations and underwhelming performances turned what should have been an advantage into yet another liability. The bench wasn't just ineffective, it became a symbol of Stephanie. White's failure to manage her roster, the most glaring decision was the complete benching of Chloe Bai. Just one game earlier, she scored 11 points in 12 minutes. Against Dallas, flashing energy and efficiency that few others on this roster consistently provide. Yet against Washington, she was glued to the bench. No explanation, no adjustment, no opportunity. Fans were baffled, and ownership likely was too. In a game where the Fever's offense went ice cold, why not turn to a young player who had just proven her ability to change momentum? The absence wasn't just puzzling, it felt like coaching negligence. Meanwhile, Odyssey Sims was gifted extended minutes she did not deserve. As a veteran, Sims is expected to bring steadiness, but instead, she showed inconsistency. After scoring 9 points in the first half, she collapsed in the second, contributing just 2 points in 12 minutes. The troubling part wasn't just her decline in production, it was the coach's refusal to pull her when it was obvious she had lost rhythm. 26 minutes from Sims, while Chloe Bai never left her warm-up jacket. That's the kind of rotation that leaves fans shaking their heads. Lexi Hull's performance was another sore spot. Known for her defensive grit, Hull looked exhausted, spending so much energy chasing Mystics guards that she offered nothing on the other end. Offensively, she was invisible. Defensively, she was cooked multiple times. If Hull's only contribution is defensive pressure, and even that fails, what's left? The answer on this night was not much. Michaela Timpson added little in her 13 minutes, grabbing only 3 rebounds and providing no offensive punch. Demiris Dantas had a brief highlight, with her three-pointer at the third-quarter buzzer, but that was the lone bright spot from the bench. Beyond that, role players seemed passive, hesitant, and ineffective. The lack of production from the bench wouldn't be as damning if White had shown flexibility. Instead, she doubled down on poor rotations, allowing struggling players to continue, eating minutes while ignoring others who might have made an impact. It sent a message that accountability doesn't exist on this team, that roles are static, no matter the performance. For a locker room already questioning direction, that's a dangerous precedent. When role players fail, coaches must adapt. White didn't, and that failure magnified the struggles of the stars and guards. The Mystics bench, meanwhile, provided energy, timely shooting, and defensive hustle. Their role players elevated the game, while the Fevers sunk it further in. Basketball, depth wins games. Against Washington, depth was a glaring weakness, and it highlighted once again that this team isn't just underperforming at the top, it's crumbling all the way down the roster. If there was one storyline that stung the most from this loss, it was the way Washington's young players stepped onto the court and flat-out embarrassed Indiana's stars. On a night when the Fever needed Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell to dominate, it was Sonia Citron and Kiki Irvin who stole the show. 2 rookies barely carving their names into the league looked like seasoned veterans, while the Fever's supposed leaders faded into the background. Kiki Irvin was the most glaring example. Matched up against Aaliyah Boston, she didn't just hold her own, she controlled the matchup. With an 18-point, 12-rebound double-double, Irvin looked fearless, attacking the glass, finishing through contact, and making the kinds of hustle plays that swing momentum. Every rebound she grabbed felt like a dagger. Every bucket a reminder that Boston wasn't asserting herself. Fans expected Boston, the former top draft pick, to impose her will on a rookie. Instead, Irvin dictated the pace, and the Fever had no answer. Then there was Sonia Citrin, who played like she had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Citrin hit big shots, defended with grit, and carried herself with the poise of a player far older than her years. By the end of the night, she had outshined every Fever guard, exposing not just individual mismatches, but the entire lack of defensive structure on Indiana's perimeter. Watching Citrin rise, while Kelsey Mitchell forced shots and disappeared, in crunch time felt like a cruel role reversal for Fever fans. Adding to the humiliation was Alicia Clark, a veteran who made her presence felt with ruthless efficiency. She came off the bench, hit 3 consecutive three-pointers, and did it with an ease that highlighted just how unprepared the Fever's defense was. The image of Clark calmly setting her feet, taking her time, and knocking down shots while defenders scrambled late will haunt Indiana supporters. It wasn't just that she scored, it was the way she scored, making it look effortless while Indiana's guards struggled with even basic execution. The larger takeaway is what this meant for the franchise. Losing to veterans is one thing. Being completely outclassed by rookies is another. It signaled a shift in mentality. The Mystics' young players came hungry, fearless, and determined, while the Fever's supposed core shrank under pressure. For Herb Simon, that contrast is damning. How does a rookie play with more fire, more confidence, and more control than the cornerstones of his franchise? That's the kind of question that keeps an owner awake at night. By the final buzzer, it wasn't Boston or Mitchell who looked like the future of the league, it was Irvin and Citrin. And that reality cuts deep. Instead of walking away with a stabilizing win, the Fever walked away exposed, not just as a team struggling to win, but as a team whose foundation looked shakier than ever. For Simon and for fans, the embarrassment wasn't just in the loss, it was in watching the next generation of talent shine brighter than their own. The Fever's loss to the Washington Mystics wasn't just another mark in the standings, it was a defining low point that raised serious questions about the future of the franchise. Blowing a 13-point lead to a struggling opponent revealed more than bad luck, it exposed cracks in leadership, discipline, and mentality. Stephanie White's questionable decisions, from baffling rotations to poor in-game adjustments, left the team rudderless when it mattered most. Stars like Aaliyah Boston and Natasha Howard produced hollow numbers, while Kelsey Mitchell's struggles in crunch time erased any chance of a comeback. Adding insult, Mystics rookies outshined the Fever's core, highlighting just how unprepared Indiana looked. Herb Simon's frustration is no mystery. This loss represented not just a failure on the court, but a failure of direction at every level. The question now looms, can this team find its backbone, or has the season already slipped away?